Hi everybody, it's Leslie here. I've got 5.5 cards for you today. So massive thank you to everybody who said yes to Christmas in the comments on my last video. I've got 16-ish ideas for spinning puzzle cards with a Christmas theme. I'm going to stick today just to circles. I thought I was going to do it all in one video. It's never going to fit in one video. So we're sticking with circle ideas for today. I've got 3 different styles. I'm not going to make this one on camera. I was going to, but this is basically exactly the same as the first ever spinning puzzle card that I made in my original video that says it's spinning puzzle cards with minimal supplies. I'll link it in the description below. My first idea is use your circles, make baubles. As you will see, you can make multiple baubles. They don't all need to be this big. Then this one I will show you how to do. So this is, again, pattern paper. I got a slightly better bauble topper on that. It's just a piece of silver card. But really simple idea. This is on a circular card blank, so it stands up all on its own. So this is more like the Spot the Dog one that I did originally. It's done in the same way, but we're stepping it up a bit and we're going to hide the brad. So you'll see there is no brad showing in the middle of this. I'll show you how to do that. And this pattern paper, which is fairy lights, made a brilliant puzzle. So that's the next one we're going to do today. And then we're going to go tiny. So somebody in my comments said that they didn't have dies as big as the ones I've got. So I've done a super tiny one. I'm going to show you how to do all the masking. This was stamped as a single panel. I show you how to do all the masking and how to go super tiny. And then just to show you that you don't need to stamp if you love die cutting. These happen to be they are layered snow globe dies. Lost my words tonight. And they work in exactly the same way as the last set. They're only 4 layers because they're actually even smaller. If you compare the circle, it's even smaller than the last one. And I happen to have 3 in the set that make these. And you'll see I hadn't finished this when I did the video earlier. I've come back and put some black pen on so it looks better than it does in the middle of the video. And I added a lovely sentiment. This is from the lovely Skull and Cross Buns, who I mentioned. They're the ones who did the geometric burr stamp on the hexagons that I did. So this is a lovely Skull and Cross Buns Merry Christmas stamp. And I just stamped that to finish it. And this is where the half comes in, because I started out making this into a slimline card, and I'll explain what my mistake was and why I've not finished this one off. But you can see if you've got 3 small things, 3s always look good, you could do a slimline card. And then hopefully I've saved the best for last. So how about a spinning puzzle card with a snow globe that actually works in the middle? So we've got a spinner shaker snow globe. So this is the last one. I'll put chapters in so that you can see how all these work. This has only got 3 rings, but this is the most complicated one I've made so far because of the way I've stamped the pattern on these rings. And I'll show you how to make the whole of this. That's the ones we're making today. So, and there's this one as well as a little extra, so you get to see that one going on as well. So let's get on with it, and hope you enjoy the first edition of the Christmas spinning card puzzles. This was the idea to make a bauble. What I did, I just used pattern paper. This is super sparkly, shiny pattern paper with presents on it. Makes a fab puzzle. It's got a die cut word in the middle that says Winter Wishes. And I made my own little bauble topper, and I messed it up a bit because I managed to not dry the ink on it very well because I was trying to make it silver. But I wanted just to create this one so you can see these would work brilliantly to use pattern paper up if you've got tons of that in your stash. So yeah, this is exactly the same method, so you can see, the important bit to note is you can see the brad in the middle of these. It probably works with 1,000,001 pattern papers. So I might rescue this and put it on a round card. I've not decided yet, but there you go, your first basic circle Christmas card. The next card that we're going to make is going to be another bauble card, but we're going to step this one up a little bit. We're going to use this lovely Spreading Christmas Cheer stamp that's in this. This was from Creative Stamping. This was the Battersea Cats and Dogs Home charity set they did. And all I've done is I've stamped Spreading Cheer. That's just in VersaFine, and fussy cut it out. Now, this is quite thin card. It's definitely card, not paper, but it just, whatever you do that's going to be stuck to your layers, you need to make sure that it's thin enough that by the time they're laid together, your die's going to cut, or at least very nearly cut through them. Stick that roughly in the middle so that the middle of my sentiment is going to land somewhere in the middle of my circles. And while that's drying for a second, so I've got already cut out one of my largest, two of my next size, two of my next size, two of my smallest that are going to be in my puzzle, and then I've got, it doesn't need to be dead on circular, but it needs to be small enough to hide behind your smallest layer. So because I still had one smaller in my die set, I've just cut a circle. You could have roughly cut a circle. It just needs to be small enough to hide so that it's not going to stick out underneath your top piece. So you need one extra. It will become clear white in a second. I'm just going to die cut this. So we've got all of our things. Now, if I put a hole through the centre of this and put a great big brad in it, I'd lose some of that image. So I'm actually going to set that to one side with its layer that we're going to stick it to, which, like I said, that just gives you enough thickness that when people are fiddling with it and turning it, they can manage to get their fingers in there. So that one is going to get set to one side. So all I'm going to do is glue all these together. I am going to glue those two layers together, and then I'll come back and then explain the next step. The next thing you need to do is sit this one out of the way. You do not want to cut a hole in this because, like I say, I don't want a great big blob in the middle of my greeting, which is what would happen. This one is the one we want a hole through. Just get some scrap, just that'll sit behind our biggest one if we want the biggest one to spin. So as long as this is big enough to stick it to your card and you can get enough glue, enough foam squares on there, that can be any shape or size. So let me find my tapes. Where have I put them? Okay, so we've got, that's temporarily taped on the back there. As long as it's in roughly in the middle, doesn't matter. This is the point where you actually want to solve your puzzle, and that's going to be tricky. You want to get your piece for the middle, everything lined up, as we said, as best you can. I'm trying to look over the top, make sure everything's lined up as best I can get it, and including your little piece in the middle. So we're back to our template. Mark in the middle. Remember, we're not cutting through this. This time, what brad you use doesn't matter. So if you've got some brads that you think are particularly ugly, or you've got a lot of them, or you've got a colour that you don't like, you know, use those up. It should now become clear. The reason we popped that in there is we want that to spin, but I want this so it doesn't have a big brad through the middle. So I now need some foam squares that are just a tiny bit deeper than our brad in the middle. These ones are just the right size. So what you want to do is put your foam tape, or your foam squares, sorry. You can use foam tape. You can obviously double it up if you've only got foam tape on a roll and it's thin stuff. Double it up just so they're just thicker than the brad in the middle. I can feel they're just above the surface of the brad. I'm going to do the same as I did for die cutting, make sure it's solved. So if there is anything ever so slightly out of alignment, when I do stick this down in the middle, it should be in its best position when it's complete. So because of the camera, I can't quite get over the top of it. So hopefully that's good. So I'm just pushing that onto the foam squares. So now, without having the brad showing in the middle, we've now got this really fun card. Again, it's not perfect. I didn't get it perfectly in the middle, which is why I said whatever you use for your liner pieces, try and pick a colour that kind of blends in with the background. So there we go. We've got our puzzle ready. There we go. So it stands like that. So it stands perfectly well, it won't wobble. And all I need to do, like I said, is add a bauble topper. So there we go. I've just made a quick topper to stick on there, but everything spins. So we can open up our card, put, you know, Happy Christmas, whatever it is we want to put on the inside. I'd just do that with a stamp. I'd probably, because these aren't the thickest cards, I'd probably put, you know, another circle or something in there. I knew this paper would make a fab puzzle. Look at that. It's, you know, you really need to concentrate. So yeah, look at your pattern papers, see what you've got that would make a really good puzzle, because you can use, you know, circles. You could do this with scallops. You know, this one would work, you know, with pretty much any sort of circular shape. But yeah, so that shows you how you don't have to have your brad showing in the middle, and it just gives it a tiny bit of extra dimension, you can probably see. But if your brad's not very thick, you know, if it's not got a really fat head on it, you can definitely do that and it doesn't look wrong once you've solved it. So yeah, I thought that was a fun idea to do a bauble. Made my own topper. I'm sure some of you are more artistic and could draw a better one, or like I say, some die sets have got things you could use up there instead. You could tie some twine through it, all sorts of different ideas. So there you go, baubles, pattern paper. Or if you've got inky backgrounds, or if you've stamped your own items, you know, you could stamp your own paper if you don't have pattern paper. Tons of different things you could put in the background. You could leave off a greeting. So in my first example, I could just have used the pattern paper and popped a greeting somewhere else on the card. You know, tons of ways that you could do that. But that's one idea, make a bauble using your circle dies. Our next card is actually going to be a snow globe. And this was the idea that I had the moment I'd done my original circle spinning puzzle cards. I thought, oh, you could do a silhouette inside a snow globe. So the other reason I decided I was going to do this particular snow globe, because I've got some bigger snow globes in my collection of 20 years worth of stash, but somebody commented on one of my videos that they didn't have available to them nesting circles that went up as large as mine. So I thought we'd actually have a go at a tiny puzzle in a snow globe. And just for scale, I'm going to use, this is a 4-inch square, so 4 by 4 inches. And I've got, all I've done to start with to prep in advance is, this is a piece of nice 4 by 4 stamping card. I've got a 4 by 4 card blank. I bought this, these are the ones that come pre-scored. I think this is a Craft UK one, but of course you could easily make your own. It just needs to be 8 inches by 4 inches and scored at 4. If you want European sizes, 4 inches by 4 inches is just under, I think it's just under, let me double check, it's just over 10 centimetres. And in fact, this card blank might actually be, yeah, I think this card blank's actually closer to 10 centimetres square than 4-inch square. But I cut myself 4 inches, and at the end, if I need to trim off the edges, I can always do that. I'm just going to show you what I've done to pre-prepare. So just for a sense of scale, this is my full set, and I've gone for the 5 smallest. And the reason I've gone for the 5 smallest is because that fits pretty much over this snow globe stamp that I'm going to use. So if you've got a snow globe and you've got circle dies, you'll probably be able to find one that fits. And I'm not going to skip any. So I'm going to go all the way down to my smallest die in the middle here. So we're going to try and do a 5-layer puzzle card, but we're going to try and make it tiny. I haven't tried this yet. This could be disastrous and you'll never see it. As we've done for all of the other ones, I've just cut in advance 2 of each. Because these are quite small, I thought, oh, I might as well cut an extra of the big one. I can use a circle behind it. So I've got 2 of every single size that I'm going to use, the 5, and an extra one for the middle. So like in the last card, I'm not going to have my brad showing because I'm not sure what's going to fall in the middle. It could be that it's all black and I could use a black brad, but just so I don't need to worry about it, I've just cut myself an extra. And again, I've cut myself a template, just the same size as my outer one so that we can find the centre. But for now, I'm going to pop you on fast forward, decorate my panel, which is the full size of the front of my card, and then we'll come back, cut it up and stick it all together. So just because the silhouette stamps that I'm using are going to go off side to side, I'm just going to make myself a mask. This is just it's one of the post-it notes that's sticky all over. So it's just a sticky all over post-it note, and I want the outside and I want to be able to stamp inside the circle, but I'd want to use both pieces. So what I'm going to do is I've just got it on a sheet of like thin copy paper just to make life easier to cut it out, because I don't think I'm going to have anything hanging off the top. I'm going to cut into my mask from the top and just cut round so we can use the inside circle and the outside circle and the outside mask as well. Okay, so all I've done is used my black pen. So for any edges where it wasn't quite up to the edge, I've just gone back in with my black pen. This happens to be a Spectrum Noir outliner, but you know, you could do it with a black Sharpie if that's all you've got. Just filling in any tiny little bits around the edges where the mask was either not quite in place or if it didn't stamp quite perfectly. And I've given this time to heat set because it's a silver pigment ink that I used. And all of these stamps, I don't think I showed you before, I've cleaned all my stamps, given it time to dry. All of the stamps were from this set, which, you know, I did a little bit of stamp surgery to get the stars off the Merry and Bright, but even the snow's in there, the tree, everything I used were all in this set. And this is one from Practical Publishing, which probably means it was probably Simply Cards and Papercraft, but it's from a few years ago. It hasn't got a date on it, this one. This is called Winter Wonderland, embossing folder and stamp set. So I just keep the packaging when it's got ideas on it and pop it in the back of the sleeve, and I fold them or cut them so that they fit back in the sleeves that I use. So hopefully this is dry enough so that we're not just doing a plain circle, I thought I would do some inking, but I want my snow globe to stay nice and white. So after saying I thought I'd finish my stamping, I decided to stamp the greeting across the bottom. So same stamp set, I just used the Believe in the Magic of Christmas. So let's do, always the best bit when you've used a mask. Let's hope it's not pulled too much of the silver off. It has pulled a little bit off, but because I wanted it to be snow, I think that that's going to be okay. And there we go. So there we go. There's my panel ready for us to cut. So just like we had before, we need to get our dies. So largest one, same size as my snow globe, or as close as I can get in my dies. I'm sorry if you can hear funny noises in the background. My dog just sneezed. Oh, I'm doing it from my up. So because we're taping these together, I'm putting them cut inside down so that we can put our tape on the back. And because these are all the one right next to each other, there's not going to be very big gaps this time. I think what I'm going to do is line up my biggest one over the top of my snow globe, hold it there a sec, drop this down like a puzzle piece. Hopefully I can use the edge, the outer edge. Yeah. So I've got that lined up, so I'm using a thicker piece to line it up. And then this is a not very tacky piece. I want to lift this up again and drop it back. So this is the point where I hope all this effort hasn't gone to waste. Always, if you want to keep your outer layer, make sure you peel your tape off really carefully. Don't want anything to rip at this point, do we? So, number one's come out, the middle. Okay, so we've got these ones all intact. And I can see it's all cut through. Just want to be really careful. Yeah, we've got them all out. Not quite dead on with my snow globe, but it was close enough that I'm not too concerned, and it's cut through everything beautifully. So, as we did in the last example, we don't want to stick a brad, because at this point the brad would be like covering up a big chunk of the middle of the sleigh that I happen to have stamped. So we're not going to stick that one. We're not going to stick the hole through that one. So, as we've done before, we're just going to stick all of our layers together, but skipping our last one. On my last one, I did stick this to its layer because it was only thinnish paper, but because this is 300 GSM stamping card, I don't think I need to put the extra layer in. So I don't want to stick this one down. It's this one that's going to sit in the middle, and so on and so forth down to my biggest one. So again, I'm going to solve my own puzzle and get my hole through the middle, just as we've done every other time. I don't know how well I got that in the middle, but you know, doing it on camera, trying not to get my head in the way now. I've not got that very well in the middle, but we'll go with it. This time we've got an outer one at the back that's going to spin, and we've got all of our inner ones, including our one in the middle, that's going to spin. Just double check we're all lined up as best we can be, and I'm going to go and line up the bottom because obviously that's where the snow globe on mine is sitting. It just drops in like a puzzle piece. So that's how you do it. So now we've got, I'm really pleased with that because this is the first tiny one I've done. So there we go, all solved, pretty silhouette snow globe scene. It's got the nice silver for the snow. I just went kind of monotone with the blue. I didn't get my hole particularly well in the middle, but again, I think that's going to make a fun puzzle. There you go, all mixed up. So even though my layers on this are as thin as my circle dies are going to allow me to go, there we go, all mixed up. You get the idea of what it's going to be because you can see Santa's sleigh there. So I think that would be really fun as a kid's card. You know, it's complicated enough, but without being, you know, completely unsolvable. You don't want it to be so hard, you know, that they don't realise what it is they're supposed to be doing. And just solving it so you can see it all finished again. So like I said, don't give up if you don't quite get your hole in the middle. It still looks fine. Just make sure that when you've got it in your solved position, you know, everything's lined up so it looks pretty when it's complete. My next card, because the last one worked so well with the smaller circles, I've gone with the same setup of my dies. So this is the same 5 smallest from my nesting circle dies. And I'm going to use these ones. These are, I think these were a Trimcraft, Dovecraft, whoever they are now, DRK Crafts, but they're first edition dies. And this was a set from a few years ago that I loved. And I've made some lovely tags with this. But the idea is that these don't layer. These are 3 different images that you can use for your snow globe. And then you've got the snow globe die. So you cut these in a darker colour, these in a mid-tone, and then you mount it on maybe white because it's going to be the snowdrops that are left. So because I know I need to cut through at least 3 layers with my circle dies, I've gone for the same thin paper that I used on the dinosaur one. So this is the same 160 GSM paper that I used for the dinosaur. And I've pulled out from that same pack a white, a grey and a black. So I'm just going to go and die cut 3 of these, 1 of each of these, and I'll show you what I do with the white in a moment. If any of you have been watching me before, you know that I like to show you if I mess up, because it happens to all of us. I'm going to rethink this card. I might come back and finish it, but I very stupidly, probably, stuck my snow globe to a white piece and then stuck it on another white piece. So my die cutter was having to go through 4 layers, which for tiny little bits is okay, but I had to run it through 2 or 3 times and the paper has got more and more compressed, and hopefully you can see I've got little lines everywhere, and that's just because it was really going through too thick a piece of card. And then I had to start running my craft knife around, and I've made a mess of some of the edges. So I could salvage this card. Oh, and his little antlers come off, look, when I was running my craft knife around. So that didn't come off, I don't think, with lack of glue. It's come off because I caught it with my craft knife. So I need to stick this little piece back on. So while I think I probably could salvage it, I'm not going to throw it away just yet. And I might revisit this idea. I'm going to show you what it is I actually want to show you on a bigger piece of card and on a different shape. So you got the idea. You could do a slim line with 3 things going across. That wasn't the point of the design. What I was trying to show you was the embossing folder technique so that you can have things stuck down and your embossing folder. So what I've done this time, I've just gone back and recut my 3 layers, and I've used my largest square nesting die, which is just under 6 inches. So this fits on a 6-inch card with a little bit of spare around the edge. And I thought I'll change my design up. I'll keep my 3 snow globes, but I'll stick them onto a square, and then I can have a greeting down here. So we're going to keep our 3 puzzles design, but this time my die cut machine, when I come to cut my circles, is only going to have to go through. I made sure this is nice and thin as well. This is only a 160 GSM, which is why it perhaps looks a bit flimsy. And the 2 papers are all only 160 GSM. So hopefully my die cutter will go through these without compressing it and giving me all those extra lines and the absolute pain of having to try and cut through and preserve everything. So I'm going to get all this stuck down and start cutting again. Right, so we have our 3 panels stuck, and the way that I was lining this up was by taking the outer ring off and hopefully lining it up. And this does just sit, I can show you on here, this sits literally just inside the cutting edge. So it should the cutting edge should just sort of sit inside that black line if I've got the black line sat square. So there's always different ways that you can line up to get things centered how you want them. So what I was actually trying to show on this card was that if you want your background to have some texture, but you still want your image to go into the background. So let me just show you. On this card, which was in the first set I did, I used an embossing folder and then just stuck my image on top. And these pieces were then also just stuck on top of the embossing folder image. But I thought it'd be fun if the embossing folder went across everything and then these were stuck on top. So what I was trying to show you was that you could do that. So I'm going to have to go and run this through my big die cutting machine because this doesn't fit through my smaller one. So here we go. I ran this through my big die cutting machine, my Gemini, and now hopefully you can see all my lovely texture on this one. Now all we need to do is assemble, which is exactly the same as before. So I'm not going to subject you to that. I'm just going to do exactly what we've done every other time. So I just want to show you the hidden brad technique one more time. I've got everything stuck together. I've got my holes through the middle. So I'm going to hopefully do something fun later on in the video with the hidden brad technique, and just need you to see exactly how we do it. So show you one more time. So we've got our back one, which is nothing on it, and that's what's going to allow this one to spin. And we've got a spare piece in the middle that's just going to hide in the middle there. Pop our brad through. And again, I've not got that awfully well centered, but again, we'll cope. So pop our brad through the center there, and then find the right middle because we've got 3. All we need to do is stick some foam squares, whatever fits, whatever you've got that fits, that's roughly the same height as your brad, so you can hide it in the middle here. So we've got our foamed squares on there, and all we need to do is line this up, and there we go. there's our first one all done. Nearly finished. I just want to find a nice circular greeting to pop in there. Now, am I completely happy with this? No. If I was going to do this card again, I would definitely do my layer here, the one that's in the pale grey, in a darker colour, because it's got lost down here in the base, in the background. And I still might, especially because I've embossed over it, I still might take a black pen and go around that so that you can see it. Do I love it? No, I like the idea. I just don't think I've executed it particularly well today. So I'm going to mix all these up and you can see. I wanted to show you the technique that I thought of how to use your embossing. And I don't think I explained that very well either. I'm not having the best time, am I? So the reason I wanted to show you, so there it is all mixed up. So I think that works really well. Puzzle card, you can see, obviously the tree's quite obvious what it's going to be, but this one's not really that obvious. And the deer's not as obvious as obvious as I thought it was going to be. But you get the idea. You can do 3 smaller puzzles or 4 smaller puzzles, however many fit of what you've got on your card. So just while I'm putting this back, what I was going to try and explain is I wanted to show you how you could get your texture so that you didn't end up with so much bulk. So like I say, on this one, everything's stuck on top of the embossing, and I didn't do a very deep embossing because I didn't want to keep adding more and more bulk to this, especially because I was putting the gems on it and everything. So I did quite a shallow emboss on this, and you can see it's still got quite a bit of thickness by the time you've added things on top. So what I was trying to explain, probably very badly, is because I've cut out my panel and then embossed it, these are dropped back into the slot they came out of. So you've not got the bulk, though this is quite a deep emboss, which I think you can see quite clearly. It's quite a deep embossing folder. These are sitting on top, sitting dropped back into it. So you don't have to worry about sticking to the embossing nor the thickness it adds because you're dropping back into it. I hope that makes sense, and that was what I wanted to show you. And I'm sure you could come up with other ideas of why you would want to emboss your background. Like I say, I'm just trying to use things in my stash. So I'm busy I'm still using up white scraps, especially with these tiny ones. I've found tons of white scraps that would fit all these tiny circles on, whereas they wouldn't fit the bigger circles on. So I'm still using white scraps, other than for the background panel here that I embossed. Everything on this, and obviously the card blank, everything on this came out of my scraps box. And the same for my failed attempt. Everything out of this all came out of my scraps box. And I've still got scraps because they're such small images. I could, raid my scraps and just go for it and not worry that I've messed one up. It's only bits of paper. I might still come back and finish that one, we'll see. So yeah, I just need to find a nice greeting to go on that. But yeah, hopefully you can see there's a bit of dimension to it, and you gain a little bit obviously by putting the foam pads in to get the hidden brad technique. But if you've got some thinner brads and some thinner foam tape, I'm thinking I could probably use slightly thinner foam tape than I have on these, because the brad, it's not quite touching. But I think once it's been through the post, it will actually squash these back down a little bit, and I think that would still It might be a large stamp in the UK. I think it might get caught on the slot. I would check it. So there you go, an idea to use 3 smaller ones on, and again, these are much smaller. You can see, you know, they're tiny images really, but it still works. So if you've normally got some small dies, small circle dies, see what you've got, see what images you've got that fit. So let's do another one. Last card in my snow globe section. Hopefully I've saved the best for last. This one's taken a little bit of extra thought. So I've done a lot of the preparation in advance. I'm just going to quickly show you what we're using and what I've prepared, and then we're going to assemble it and hopefully it'll all make sense. So this is the stamps that I chose to use. This is Classic Christmas Scenes, and it's got little snow globe circle scenes all set up ready, plus some extra ones that you could use, another little Father Christmas. And I could have done this card with any of them, probably except the one that's inside, because it wouldn't make sense for the inside one. But I could have done it with any of these and it would have worked absolutely fine. I took a bit of inspiration off the back here. So they've got the scenes with things stamped around the outside, and all these things around the outside were all helpfully curved. So all the stamps I'm using have come from this set, which came helpfully. By the way, this was Creative Stamping. If you've not guessed, I subscribe to Creative Stamping, so I've got pretty much all of the Creative Stamping ones, barring a few right at the beginning. So this is the die set that came with it. So it's got this lovely little curved one that I thought I could make a base out of, which is what we're going to do. So I've already got some pieces cut out ready for that. So I'm going to sit those out the way because I don't need those right to the end. And I've used the Glad Tidings down at the bottom. So I've used the circle die and I've used this die. So I've got an extra circle that was sized to fit these stamps inside it. So I am going to use this. So that's why I've got an extra circle going on. You don't need this. You can do it with your own circle dies. So just remember I've got an extra one. Then what I did was I stamped my image and I chose the little snowman one. And I cut it out with a circle die just from my set that's a bit bigger than the one that came with it. So the one that came with it, it goes off the edge so that you don't have any white around the edge. So the one I did is just a bit bigger. You can see that hopefully. So I stamped it. I actually stamped it twice because I had it in my stamp platform just in case I messed up my colouring. So I stamped it, coloured it, just some really quick colouring. I used my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blends, but I didn't do anything fancy on it. It's just coloured. And then I stuck these two dies together with washi tape on the back like we've been doing all along and cut it out of foam. So this is just thin foam, funky foam, whatever it's called, but Crafters white foam. So it's now the same size as my outer circle. Don't need the middle, save that for something else. It's now the same size for my outer circle and sized so that my inner one fits inside it. I now don't need my outer one again. So this one was from here. Okay, so what I did was I then chose one up from it, missed one up, missed one, and went another one up. So I've now got, oh, I also, from the larger one that I've just put back, cut myself an acetate piece. So I imagine if you've been crafting for any amount of time, you've got a fair idea where I'm going now. So we've got acetate, we've got a little wall, we're doing a shaker. And this suddenly makes sense because, of course, a snow globe, you flip it over and shake the snow. So a shaker card on a spinning puzzle card kind of makes sense to me. So my idea now is this is the part of this die is this inner size and then we're going to have 1, 2, 3 rings. Now if you had larger nesting circles, you could obviously go bigger and have more layers, but I thought them straight together was just a bit too close on a bigger scale card. So what I then went and did was I cut myself my circle from my largest die, and just to make what's hopefully a complex puzzle, you won't see much of the inner one. Sorry, you will. You'll see more of it than that, because you'll see everything that's on the outer of that ring. It will make sense in a minute, because this ring will show up. But all I did was I stamped to try and get the pattern so that the pattern's going to go off the edges of my different sizes, so it won't be immediately obvious. So like I say, I just used those rounded stamps just to stamp so we've got a border. I could have gone colour, I could have done all sorts of other things, but chose not to. So now this is our top piece. So now for my 3 rings, of which we're just going to discard the centre, which is why there's no stamping in the centre, I just need to do the same thing we've been doing all along. Stick my dies together and die cut this. So I'll stick you on fast forward while I do that. So hopefully you saw I just assembled all this. So as we've done every other time, biggest ring, liner piece, next one down, ring, liner piece, and then for my centerpiece, which obviously is going to be our shaker in this instance, we've got its own back, we've got its frame. Now its frame is slightly bigger, and that was on purpose because this is going to stick up a little bit more. And this, to allow it to spin, needs a circle on the back. It doesn't need to be the full size. It could be one of these smaller ones. But I thought it might be easier to drop that in and then line it up. So I think I'm going to go with the big one. So the same size as our outer ring. So I don't need my 2 smaller ones, and I don't need the centre because of course that's now our shaker. So it will end up something like this. So hopefully that's clear what I've done. If not, ask me in the comments. So I'm just going to stick all this together, get my shaker bits in here, and get everything stuck together. This is my little tip, because the funky foam is stretchy and quite thin. I've just used the middle piece that I cut out just to popped it back in there, and just let the glue, and just making sure I smoothed all my sides, let all my glue dry, and then I can just pop that piece back out and it's a nice circle. And I've just got some, this is Wow White American Crafts brand. So this is one of the old Wow American Crafts glitters. Make sure I have no dog hair in there, because I'm forever getting dog hair in my shaker cards. And this is just, it's just a big glitter. And I'm hoping it'll make a nice puddle at the bottom. Okay, so now everything's stuck together, put the lid on my glue. We're back to doing exactly what we've done every other time. use our template to make a hole. So get everything lined up. And we're obviously not punching a hole through our shaker card, because that would be very silly. Yeah, and as I suspected, I've made myself a tricky puzzle, which was what I wanted. Because it's only 3 rings, I wanted it to be tricky. You can see I've got a lovely little snowbank in the bottom there. Not too static. I thought it was all going to stick, but most of it's dropped because it's a nice colourful picture. I think that will be fine. So now all I need to do is put some foam tape on the back of this, on the back of this around the brad. So there we go. That took me a ridiculously long time to match up and stick together. But trust me, even though this is only the 3 rings, this is really tricky puzzle. So I don't want to mix it up again at the moment. I'm just going to get that lined back up. That's all lined up again. Get my foam tape on the back and stick it to my card. I've done far too good a job of making this a complicated puzzle. Okay, so all I've done to finish this card off is I've got a 6x6 card blank, and because I didn't use my largest circle die, I think it's 1 down from the largest. I thought I would have space to make this look like a snow globe with some bits down here at the bottom, and these were just cut out of a scrap that I had in my box. And I was thinking if I did something like this, they'd sit down the bottom here. So I think I'm just going to sort of stick these together and then they can tuck underneath. But I want to have this assembled before I stick that bit down. So I'm just making sure this is all the right way up before I stick it down. I don't want my snowman falling downhill. And I'm sticking it right at the top so that I've got space. I'm just getting rid of my temporary tape so I don't stick it in there. Put some glue on this so I can slide it up underneath. So there we go, all finished. So hopefully you can see that when this spins, all the patterns on the outside edge go out of sync because I made sure that they did. And it's so hard because I've got an overhead camera, but of course when it spins, if I can get enough of an angle that you can see, when it spins, just like in a real snow globe, the snow goes everywhere, and when you give it a little shake, it's a shaker and a spinner, you know, the snow goes back down to the bottom. Some of it will stick to the acetate. I should probably put a bit of anti-static powder in there. Cleaned my acetate, you know, saved acetate from some packaging, so it's probably not the cleanest. But there we go. So that was my brainwave to use a spinner to make our snow globe shaker. And trust me when I say it might only be 3 rings, but this is actually, I think, the most complicated puzzle that I've done yet because of how I chose to make sure that these went over the edges. And if you haven't got curved stamps, if you've got anything that's in a straight line, you could stick it on a block and curve it around to do exactly the same idea. So if you've got a line of snowflakes, just bend it around your block slightly. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that. It took a little bit of thought to work out how to make sure everything was going to spin. I hope that you understood what was going on as we went along. And yeah, hopefully, I think I saved the best for last. I really like that. But you could do that with any type of image to make a shaker, as long as you've got circle dies. And the bottom piece, you could cut your own shape. I just happened to have something that was the right curve, so I used it. So yeah, hopefully that's the end of my circles ones, I think. I've got other ideas. I'll never manage to make them all on camera, I don't think. But yeah, I'm going to share more photos of these. I've got my new website. It's coming out. I think it might be live already. I've had my 17-year-old helping me this week because she's finished school for the summer, and she's been helping me update my website and new blog. I don't know if the blog post will be out yet, but if it is, if you go to www.handmadeinwindsor.co.uk, that's my website. My blog should be on there. If it's not live yet, it will be soon. And yeah, there's links to all my other socials on there. So I'm trying to get better at posting on all the other social networks as well. So Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. I'm at Handmade in Windsor Lab on everything. But my website is just www.handmadeinwindsor.co.uk. So there you go. Exciting little bit of news. So yeah, so there will be another video coming soon with more Christmas puzzle ideas with different shapes. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thanks for watching, and hope you see you again soon. Bye.